talk about the Big Bang for a little bit until someone wants to come up and chat. We don't know what initiated the Big Bang. And that's the unsatisfactory answer that you're going to get because that's what we know. There are scientific hypotheses. Now, scientific hypotheses are not typically just let's come up with an idea. They're usually based on something, an extrapolation of existing knowledge, or in this case, typically either an extrapolation or sometimes an implication through mathematics of other hypotheses like string theory or possibly Einstein's rules. But Einstein in particular, we know that doesn't work too well because the Big Bang starts at a fraction of a second, which is the Planck time. It's something like 10 to the minus negative 23 seconds, which is apparently the smallest amount of time unit that can be. Apparently, time, according to the Einstein equations, are a quanta, and they can only get so small. I'm not a physicist, so I'm not going to explain it more than that. I don't know it better than that. But the equations themselves essentially go to infinities and zeros at the point of zero time. So that means that the equations break down. So they can't predict why. So we don't know. There are hypotheses. As I've said many times, theists would purport that God started the universe, or sometimes they don't even believe in the Big Bang. They think that God either caused the Big Bang or that God caused the universe to just become at a certain time 6,000 years ago, which of course is wrong. It's not 6,000 years old. We know that in 100 different ways. It's billions of years old. So the thing is that God as a creator of the universe is a hypothesis. It's a conceptual hypothesis, which means it is weaker than a mathematical or a hypothesis based on extrapolation of something else that we do know. So it is a completely philosophical hypothesis, which means it's just an idea. It came from an idea. So the guide hypothesis is basically that this sentient being with a mind intentionally, we'll say, began the Big Bang, initiated the Big Bang. Well, that is full of assumptions. So you can't, it is incorrect to say that that's how it happened. Okay, you can't make an assertion and say that's the way it happened because I was taught that. You have no basis for that assumption, other than that maybe somebody else taught you that. So you're fine to hold it as a hypothesis, but you're stuck down with the rest of us not knowing. So asserting that your God did it is incorrect. You do not have the justification to assert that, to say that, you do not have the justification to believe that. Is what it comes down to. And I will point out a couple other things, is that if the universe was caused by something, we don't know that if it was caused intentionally. We don't know if it was caused by a sentient being. We don't know if it was caused by a natural force that operates, sort of across multiverses or quantum multi-fields or whatever. So it's wrong to even believe, even to assert. Well, you can assert your God hypothesis, but you're on the table with another 12 versions of that, not to mention another 1,000 versions of any other deity that might have created the universe. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to live with not knowing. And if you don't live with not knowing, then your belief is unjustified. Maybe someday we'll know. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that says science will someday figure it out. There is hope for that, obviously. There is, because we would like to know. We can extrapolate a little bit given that science has resolved a lot of previously unknown issues and questions. But because it is such a different territory, we know a lot about what's inside the universe, and we don't know what's outside coming in or before space-time, if before means anything. So we may never know. It may also take testing that requires energy to the scale that we can never create, like the Large Hadron Collider in Europe is the biggest tool we have so far to create high-level, high-energy particle disruptions or collisions, and it's a very powerful thing. But it is actually still a far cry from what we would need. I would need to go to sort of in those first fraction of a second. What I've read someplace, I couldn't say where, frankly, at this time. That we would need a particle accelerator that is literally about the size of the orbit of the Earth. And obviously, we're never going to get to that anywhere near our lifetime. So jump way in the future and maybe something will happen. So yeah, so it really, the interesting part about it then becomes the question of why people believe they're justified in believing that God did it. And then that takes you down the road of investigating human psychology and believing by desire. You want it to be true, so. Or you, certain set of people, particularly on the conservative side, studies have shown correlate with not being comfortable with not knowing the answers. So they accept hypothesized answers or intuitive answers. Now that's even interesting to me because, like I just gave you 4 or so other hypothesized answers, and nobody's jumping at those. You know, no theists are jumping at those. So you've got other biases in play, such as someone already told you about Christianity. You like Christianity. You like the idea of afterlife. Those types of things. All right. Let's see. That's a topic that comes up a lot, obviously, but I don't mind. Can atheists eat buffalo wings again? Yes, we can. Were you raised Christian? I was raised Catholic. I go over this a lot, but that's fine. I was raised Catholic. I gave it up in my late teens, probably were 17 or so, because the sermons just seemed to be stories that were not believable to me. So I put it aside. I figured I'd figured it out one day, or people were getting something, understanding something I wasn't. And when I eventually went back to it quite a number of years later, read the Bible, and it was quite obvious it was a book about people who believed, not about the gods themselves or that particular god. Currently eating wings for dinner. So what type of flavor do you like? I mean, unusual flavors. We all kind of like the basics. Spicy wings. I don't know if they were officially invented in Buffalo. I'm sorry, this light is just not bugging me now. I'm one of those people who can't decide, so it's like I'll get some of each, some barbecue sauce ones, and I can't believe I'm getting a legitimate answer to my question. I hope that's seriously said. So explain creation if no God. Well, that again is almost essentially the same answer. We don't know. We don't know how creation came. So it doesn't matter if obviously if we assume a God, that's an answer, but you have no reason to believe it. As you know, I could say, and you're gonna diss me for this, but it is perfectly logically legitimate. I could say that it was a magical unicorn or a universe spouting, multiversal black holes or something, and that would be just as good. So all we know is for sure is that we're here, and our universe is here. Dang, what is... So one day, maybe we'll explain it. I don't expect to get an explanation in my lifetime. God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning. That's just quoting from the more modern Bibles. I just saw it today, matter of fact, a video from Dan McClellan. Let me put this back a little bit. Who spoke on this. He said, if your Bible says in the beginning, that it's a false interpretation, which is a surprise to me, because as far as I'm concerned, every Bible starts with that. But he was saying that, and I'm paraphrasing from memory here because I'm not going to have a perfect recollection of it, that it essentially, in the beginning, without that phrase at the beginning of Genesis, that they were referring, and Dan's basing this on the Hebrew words, the translation of the original Hebrew words, so it's typically misinterpreted. I mean, in the beginning I can understand because it's a very nice phrase to start with, but there was something about there was matter but no form, which is a very sort of contradictory concept, but that was sort of the concept that they had at the time. And then it was sort of like, for lack of a better word, sort of activated into being. It didn't have beingness until it was activated. And then, of course, you get the problem of the light being there before the sun and things like that. Yeah, so God created the heavens and earth in the beginning. To assert that, it means nothing. Then it means no more than me saying string theory is correct. It is something that has not shown to be. We don't know that. It's just, think about how you learned that and why you are justified in believing it, why you believe that. Most likely you learned it from as a young child and were taught that, and probably in an environment where you were told not to question it. And if you do question it, you don't get good answers, to be perfectly honest. You get more exclamations. You might get, don't ask questions, stop asking questions, and you might get, you just got to have faith, both of which are, don't answer the question or do not give you a reason to believe them. So if you're just going to spit out biblical phrases and assertions, it's not, that doesn't mean anything. He says the earth takes shape like wonder. I'm sorry. This will be solved. Please follow me if you can. When I hit the 10,000 followers, I'll be able to do this on my laptop, and then I can blow it up on the screen in front of me and have giant letters instead of these little tiny ones here. The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Oops. I don't know what that means. We have to sort of try to translate words of the period. So to you and I right now, it doesn't really mean much. So we have to give some credit to the scholars who do hard work into trying to understand the best translations based on the original. I forget, was it Greek? Greek went to Hebrew, and Aramaic went to Greek, so we don't even have the original language. Already we're a step in. Well, this thing just scrolled ahead on me and I lost. Okay, I'm going to let somebody in a second here. Throw some eyes. There was another question, but why don't you believe, brother? I just went through that, so things just seem like a story. J Camp, goodbye. Take care. Have a good evening. Enjoy whatever you're going to do next. Okay. Dum. What if you were wrong and there is a God? So the Pascal's wager question, I am not capable, and this is me, everybody's different. I am not capable of believing something that I don't have a reason to believe, that there isn't sufficient logic or evidence to believe. So I, and many people like me, many being, say, 30% of the population, cannot choose to believe something. Okay, so that's number one. Belief is not a choice. You can believe certain things without by choosing, but it's not choosing, it's pretending. You can pretend to believe when you don't have justification for it, and then very often, typically down the road, you forget that you were pretending initially, and you just do believe it because you've carried this information for so long. It's not knowledge because it's not something you know to be true, but you carry it. So you can't choose to believe. I mean, when I first dealt with Pascal's wager, just my own, before I knew it was called Pascal's wager, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? Again, I don't have the choice. And what if I'm wrong? So, okay, if I think there's might be a God, and I pretend to believe, I'm going to eventually go in front of whatever, St. Peter, and then eventually God, or whatever process they have, right? And say, yes, I believe. And I'm thinking, an omnipotent deity supposedly knows what's in my head, and I'm going to lie to them? And they're going to know I'm lying. So how is that going to go down? It's like, no. I'd rather be honest and intellectually honest and say, I see you're here now, but I had no reason, I had insufficient reason to believe. So I'm sorry, I could not pretend. I didn't feel like it was pretended. It's like if I pretend, I think you would have been more insulted than if I just honestly came and said, yeah, you never gave me enough proof, and I never obtained enough proof, and I turned out to be wrong. And we kind of hope there's some mercy there based on that. So what if you're wrong? I don't want to be facing a deity and lying to them and pretending to, kiss ass, basically. So good luck to you if you ever get up there. Jesus love you, blah, blah, blah. Just throwing out stuff like that does not help. I'm here to converse and understand. So take that someplace else. Nobody was there at the Big Bang. Very true. Good point. Matter of fact, there was no matter at the Big Bang. So, of course there was nobody there, because it was before universes, it was before stars, it was before planets, it was actually before light. It was before photons. Photons didn't split out from the early universe until 300,000 years in. That's how long it took the universe to expand and cool down to the point where photons could be released. The early universe, it was opaque. You could not see through it because it was a form of plasma, which is just a form of energy. And it didn't, when it first started to cool down, it had, I don't know the numbers on, the date numbers on these other pieces, but again, it's all before 300,000 years. It cooled down pretty quick, I think, to get the elementary particles like the quarks. And then at some point later, you get the formation of particles like protons and neutrons, and I forget which came first, and then photons are released. Basically, this is a phase change. And the first photons go into the universe. The universe becomes transparent. Unfortunately, nothing has formed yet. So if you can imagine it, you have space-time, and you have photons moving around, which means photons can hit other particles, but there's nothing to bounce off. I mean, obviously there's nobody to see anything yet, but let's just assume we could magically put a pair of eyes there, or a camera or whatever. There'd be nothing to see because there's nothing for the photons to bounce off. So the first things to happen was there was the particles, and then you get the photon proton and electron coming together, and that's hydrogen. And you get a little bit of helium that happens from hydrogens hitting each other and coming together, just so. And then after that, you pretty much have to wait until stars form. And that's when enough matter comes together, gathers together, and you know, everything's with mass has gravity, so it's going to slowly pull everything within its range. I mean, you're not going to get much range on a photon, but eventually it collects enough that it starts to build up. Stars have to get to be large enough. You know, our sun is a mid-sized sun, so but smaller than that, but big enough for the gravity of all that mass to compress it down to actually ignite. And that's the first time you have light coming from fusion reactions. And so at that point, now you've got light going out, and what's around the star? There's the rest of the gas that has not yet formed into planets and stuff. So you get that proto disk that they talk about, where you see a disk of a solar system, which is always in a plane. However, it's arranged, but it's always flat with the sun in the middle and everything else going around it, and then slowly the planets kind of come together. Now you've got something for the photons coming out of that sun to hit, so the elements are illuminated. All right. So yes, nobody was there to see it. We didn't come into, well, let's just say, okay, so where's the first time something was there to see it? Early life, best we know right now, began, and we're talking about single cells, somewhere around, I want to say somewhere around maybe 500 million years in. If you want to call that seeing, in the sense that, I don't know if they were complex enough at that point. Obviously, we don't know that much detail. But certainly cells can react to chemicals in their area, and eventually they became able to, some of them became able to react to light. That's when photosynthesis came to be. So in that sense, I would call that the first seeing, you know. That is not a sentient seeing, but seeing in terms of reacting to it. All right, lots of messages. So let me see if I can jump down and then, are you just lurking? I'll send a couple of invites down here. I always kind of answer these same questions, but I honestly do not mind, because the audience keeps changing, and the more I do it, the better I will get at it in terms of being able to explain it. So maybe my verbiage will improve. Just because we weren't there to see it doesn't mean we know about it if we have evidence for it, right? Just like if the crime has been committed and then you go in to try to figure out what that crime was, you're looking for evidence of that event. So you put together what you have, and over time you've got enough to justify a story. Peanut butter Jesus. I never had a peanut butter Jesus. Is there a chocolate covered peanut butter Jesus? I don't know much about the Big Bang. I just don't see a reason to believe in him. Yeah. I agree with that. Monterey Jack. I know plenty of history. It's my minor in college. Sorry, that's just your own conversation that I'm butting in on. You guys know, if you know history, you know more than I do. Captain William Boyd says the claim is imaginary until evidence is provided. So again, can't reject it. I did not following your whole thread, but I will say that in my personal opinion, I do consider there being some evidence. I consider the Bible itself to be evidence. I think it's terrible evidence. It's vastly insufficient to believe it. I mean, it's sufficient to some degree to consider many of the historical references probable, put it that way. It doesn't take too much to justify belief in, yes, King XYZ lived in this period of time and he came before that king and after that king. I have no problem with buying that, and until someone else comes up with another historical document that conflicts with it. But anything supernatural, there's no reasons to believe that. We don't see supernatural things happening now, and every time we try to test paranormal stuff, that always comes out as no different than chance occurrences. So, do you believe Charles Manson was Jesus? No. I think we're pretty clear on that. What if we sent something so far in space that it was able to see the past of Earth? Ooh, that is interesting. I don't think that's possible. This would be a great Neil deGrasse Tyson question. Let's see. So the universe is expanding right now. It's been expanding for some time. After the initial expansion, that kind of like was essentially static, had a very small expansion for a while, and now it's kind of expanding faster again. So the edge of the universe is actually expanding at faster than the speed of light. And space itself, because space itself is expanding, it's the dark energy piece of it that's causing the expansion. So there's a horizon that we cannot see past. Also, we can't see past that initial 300,000 years. At least I'm not aware of any ability to do so with current technology, because photons are essentially the way information is transferred from one part of the universe to another. So if that's the first time that photons were released, that's as far back as you can see. So that's why the microwave background image is so important. It's a static picture of what the universe looked like at the time when photons were first released. So to see Earth past that, I don't think you could, I'm not 100% on this, but I don't think you could get away from it fast enough to be that distance away. I think that's correct. Not enough of an expert there, so. But great question. Find a scientist online and ask them that. There's several physicists. I don't have their names. I should start to build a reference. Several physicists on TikTok. Great question. Please ask that. And post it somewhere. Speaking of fallacies, I don't know what you were speaking about, but okay. I'd like to know. Maybe would you define if the Big Bang was true? Again, we know there was an initial expansion that was a very rapid one. We don't know, to be honest, now that we've gotten a little more knowledge, we don't know if the Big Bang, is the time zero that we kind of refer to, was actually the beginning. We don't know if whatever the composition of the compact galaxy was, that it didn't exist infinitely before that. We don't know if it came into being as like from the back end of another black hole or some other physical forces in a multi-universe kind of style that birthed our universe, or if the whole thing has been here forever. So we don't know yet. Those are, again, options. Gravity is a theory, and there's no such thing, and the sun is a local. Please do some research. Okay. Well, we all don't know stuff, so it's a great thing to learn. The host is wrong. It wasn't fusion. Pretty sure it was. So come up here and correct me and tell me why I'm wrong. It's basically fission or fusion, right? Fission is pulling stuff apart. Fusion is stuff mashing together. And in the center of a star, you've got the greatest pressure. So that's when things start to come together. So two hydrogens can join to become a helium, and then you slowly build up from one element to the next until you reach iron, which is the most stable in terms of that. You cannot get past iron because of the pressure and the temperature it takes to get one step up. The suns don't create that. They create higher elements when they go supernova. But I'm puzzled as to why you say it wasn't fusion. And if I'm wrong, I totally want to be corrected. So come up and educate me. Send out another invite. Okay, are you telling me that people who were notoriously, why doesn't Facebook just give us a larger font? People who notoriously made up the stories also made up the stories about God? Well, I don't know what stories you're referring besides the stories of God. Pretty much every old culture has a creation story, right? So I mean, you're back in a pre-scientific time, right? You didn't know where atoms were. Even the concept of atoms comes from Democritus, which is like 500 BC or something. But it was just like, it wasn't as specific as that. It was some, he thinks that all of matter is made up of ever smaller particles, kind of thing. So he was on the road, I guess, if you want to call it that. So you know what you know, and then you speculate as a natural philosopher of your time, or just a normal thinker of the day. Some of it you'll get right, most of it you'll get wrong. And you'll probably never know, because it will not get shown to be most likely correct with experimentation and study for centuries and millennium later. We didn't know oxygen existed until the 1800s. So forever atheist, you can reject claims with no evidence. That is generally true. I feel bad about this. Well, that's not the right word. I feel odd about this because I'm going to go against Carl Sagan, which is something I never will otherwise do, or I've never found a reason to. Sagan's statement of absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I think that's incorrect. I don't know the context to what he said that, and is a general rule. I think maybe the way he was saying it, it's true, because if you don't have evidence, that's not evidence in a way. But there's something called Bayes' theorem, which looks at probabilities, and essentially you look at a probability of something occurring, and what would you expect to see if that thing occurred, right? And then you go to a change of circumstances and compare those two situations. So certainly, if there is no X at such and such location, there will be no evidence for it. So in that sense, absence of evidence is consistence with lack of existence of that thing there. So but it's like that's the tiniest piece of it. So it's not enough to say it doesn't exist, but it is a piece that nonetheless exists. And I define that as the smallest bit of evidence. So yeah, you can reject it to the degree that you can say that it is completely unjustified to believe something when there is no evidence, and certainly when there is not enough evidence. But you would need to create another civilization and study this for years. Sure, we study lots of civilizations and we find essentially the same things. That their creation myths are not believable. Although occasionally we'll find one that has an interesting origin. If you don't know about there was the cults that came into existence after World War II. God darn it, I'm forgetting. You all know it. I'm sure you all know it. But essentially what happened was after World War II, there was the military in some of the islands in the Pacific was dropping supplies on some islands to be there for soldiers as they would come to these areas. Cargo cults, that's what they're called. And the people there at the time were more primitive, and they didn't know about the outside world. They had their own mythological beliefs and origin stories, and these supplies dropping from the sky, they took it as a delivery from the giver, whatever they called it. I don't know what the particular terms were in that culture. So essentially that created a religion. And that went on for some time, 50 years or something, before they were intervened with from our cultures and told that no, that's just real people that exist on the rest of the planet and have this thing called airplanes dropping you supplies. The Earth is flat. The sun and moon are local. Do some research. The Earth is flat. Eyes evolved around the Precambrian. I don't know the specifics on that, but I do remember reading that eyes have evolved independently like 5 times over throughout our history that we know of. So it makes perfect sense, the process of bringing in the idea that the eye is too complicated to have come into being as is, it is a very intuitive concept because it looks so complex. But of course, you can say that about anything. You can say that about the body. You can say about the complexity in a cell. But we've seen, especially when you look at the history over time in different layers, more complex stuff at the top layers and less complex stuff at the bottom layers. There's a very simple logical series that happens for the eyes. I mean, if you have photosensitive cells anywhere on your body, you're going to detect light as opposed to not light, and that's going to help you. That's going to give you the ability to know that there's not a wall in front of you, for example. So very basic, but it's an advantage. And then you just continue down that road, more cells gives you more light, so then it's more accurate. You start to see shadows and things, and then eventually things come together. Lids can help your eyes survive, and things like that. And it's just like, half an eye is better than an eye. An eye is better than half an eye, but a half an eye still gives you something, and just keep going down, just fractionalizing that down. A quarter of an eye is not as good as half an eye, but it's better than no eye. So the eyes can just continue to get more and more complex. We don't have the best eyes on the planet, right? There are species that have, multiple whatever flies, the multi-part eyes. There are species that have eyes further apart, so they've got like a 270-degree view. You can say maybe fish with eyes on the side have it the best because they've got a 360, but their straightforward isn't very good, because the straightforward would be like a peripheral vision. Their direct vision is to the side. I know this because I have a turtle with eyes on the side, and I go there with his little piece of shrimp, and I go to feed it to him because he comes up now. And it's like I put it right in front of his mouth, and he won't see it. I got to put it to the side a little bit. Oh yeah, all right, and he goes for it. All these messages. Thank you for the hearts. I just see some hearts that keep coming, and thank you for that so much. What did we evolve from? This is the sort of question I would love to ask you, what your science background is, because that kind of tells me the starting point of where to answer this question from. I'll give you some. Let's start with the first cell. I don't know if you're asking if you want to go all the way back to the conversion from inorganic to organic. So let's start at the first cell. We can have that conversation another day. So we started from the first cell. They think they still don't know where. It could have been the fertile pond. It could have been around volcanic vents. There's no light, but you have to have energy. You have to have energy that you can add to a system for molecules to grow in complexity over time. But just the right conditions too, right? Because too much energy will then break them down as quickly as they're formed. So, but the first cells come together, and then we know of cells that cluster, and that gives them a benefit if they are together rather than apart. And you see there are actually, these things are around now even, where they cluster into hundreds, and they develop sort of a tube kind of a thing, in the sense that there's an inside and an outside, so things can get captured. And then you get that similarly to the origin of pores in cell walls and things, which let electrons, small atoms and small molecules in and out of the cell without breaking up the cell. So essentially, one cell becomes groups of cells become more complex things like amoebas, and then it just grows from there. The earliest life forms from that level are probably worms, because it's just a tube, right? And you start to get some specialization now, because when you've got a cluster, it's just a cluster, right? All the cells are essentially the same, but they benefit because they're together. But as soon as you have something like a tube, there's a reason for the cells on the inside to be different than the cells on the outside. They develop different sensitivities and the ability to they become the ones that will pull nutrients in, while the outside ones become the more protective layers, right? Those types of things. And it just goes from there. You just go up the chart. Worms become sponges, and, well, you know what I mean. There's a lot of sort of elementary level things. The first cells were cells without a nucleus, and those cells consumed other cells, some of them. So now, and they actually didn't dissolve them. So now we've got, oh God, somebody please help me. the words. So now we've got a cell with a nucleus, and similarly, that's how mitochondria have come to be. Mitochondria generally create proteins, and the cell grows in complexity. So you just work up from there. From worms you get small fish-ish type things, and then you get fish, and then you get the first fish-ish type things that fins became legs, and from there it's pretty much you're off to the races. If you haven't followed her, go to YouTube and follow Sick Gibbon. She's a proper scientist, evolutionary biologist, I guess. I'm going to come down here. It says him.
Hello, sir.
Not too descriptive, but hello, him.
Hello, sir.
An oddly phrased sentence, but okay.
Well, you can just call me Ethan. I just have my TikTok thing is him. I didn't.
Okay.
My name is Ethan.
I'm Phil, by the way.
Okay, how I feel. I just wanted to ask you some questions. I mean, I'll be respectful. I just want to have a conversation. I'm kind of bored right now, so.
Right.
Why are you an atheist?
Because I didn't see enough reason to believe in the deities. And when I started to look into the explanations, they seemed to be either not enough of an answer, or they were evasive, or I was told to have faith.
Oh, okay. When you were talking about, I wasn't listening too much. I had something going on, but you were talking about where we started, I guess. Do you have, like, are you a professor? Do you have any background, degrees or anything like that? I don't know.
I'm a retired pharmacist.
Okay. All right. Do you, like, how much research have you done on, like, the universe, I guess, or evolution too? I don't know.
I don't do research. I call it, I say I study, which means I learn from others as opposed to doing the original research myself, right? We all learn from other people that have been educated in those fields, and those people do the research. So I'm a lay interest in science. It's physics and biology and not so much chemistry. Yeah, so okay. I'll read books and on this issue of belief, which is really what I study more than anything else.
Oh, you read a lot?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I read quite a bit, and then for something that's that I want to have a valid basis for what I'm saying. Yep. Other than just trusting that somebody like
somebody else did the research.
Isaac Newton knew what he was doing, and because the studies then buried him out, I'll go try to pull out original studies and read those sometimes.
What's a good book to read on this type of stuff, like that you would just suggest, I guess?
Give me a topic.
Start of the universe. I don't know.
Start of the universe. I'd probably start with, I don't know which one, but I would probably start with one of Neil deGrasse Tyson's books, because he's really good at, and this is a talent. This is it's a skill. It's a learned skill, but he's one of the best people to explain things at an understandable level for those of us who don't get, relativity and things like that.
Yeah, okay.
So start with Neil deGrasse Tyson and then move out from there.
Okay. What's some of the I guess people you say, like, not, I get what you mean by not study, like not actually like full dive studying into it, but listening to other people. What's some people you listen to? Like, I don't know, on YouTube, I guess.
Well, I mentioned one, Sick Gibbon, but I don't have time to. There's so many. I don't have time to listen to that. I spent 10 years studying belief, and I've been reading physics on and off for most of my adult life, but I spent 10 years in belief psychology and different religions and stuff, and to the degree of probably in that period maybe 250 books, somewhere in that range.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I read the Bible and the Quran and Book of Mormon. I
You read
studied
the
Buddhism.
Bible? Oh wow.
And Dianetics. But I'd throw Scientology in there too. So yeah, so I've done the best I can.
I'm starting to read the Bible. How long did it take you to finish the Bible?
It took me 9 months, actually.
9 months. That's actually really fast. Oh wow.
Well, I don't know, it felt like a long time because I wanted to read it intentionally, meaning I especially when you get to something like Kings, right, where it says this begets this generation of a king begets that generation. I wanted to read it with full attention. So I would do that. And if I found myself drifting, I would go back and read that section again. So it took me 9 months.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You started at Kings?
Kings?
Kings. Where did you start?
The whole thing. No, just Kings is an example of just a very dull section, right? Where it just.
Oh yeah, okay. I was about to say, why would you? Okay.
Yeah, no, page 1.
Genesis. Okay.
Yeah, page 1.
Oh, okay. I don't have any reason to. I was gonna try and see if I could just talk to you about faith a little bit. You seem to have done your research and seem to have made your mind up. I don't think I could do anything to drift you in any way, but yeah, I just wanted to talk and see about what your mind is thinking, what you've researched and read and watched and heard, and your opinion on it, basically.
My mind is not. It's always open to new information and be corrected. So if you tell me something that I haven't heard before, I mean, I'm not going to believe it just based on that alone, but I will definitely look into that.
Yeah. Okay. Well. If gravity was just a little bit stronger, that the universe would collapse. You've heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The way that, the universe was made, I think there's a plausible reason for a creator. There's no reason for us to, think that it just spawned out of nowhere. That it may not be Christianity. It may be another God, but for me, it's like a plausible reason for a creator of some kind. I don't know. That's just, in my mind, that's what that tells me.
So you're right. It is a plausible hypothesis, as is the other probably 10 or so I listed before. So my question to you then, why do you take that plausible hypothesis and to the point of saying, yes, I think this one is correct?
The religion I chose?
Okay, I don't want to make the subject choosing, but the religion that the God, we're talking about creators.
Sorry, I'm just confused about the question.
Okay, you think that, clarify me here if I get this wrong. You think that, should we do Christian God or just God here?
A God. What I believe in is Jesus Christ. I believe that personally, but I haven't done enough research yet. That's just for me right now. But I believe that even if Jesus Christ did not exist, which I believe he does, that there must be a God, right?
Okay, we don't have to go to Jesus because that's New Testament, and we're talking about creation of the universe here, right?
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, Christian God.
Let's put the Trinity concept aside. Just keep the discussion a little simpler.
Yeah, that is a hard one.
Yeah, so let's just say that the Christian God created the universe. That's your belief?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. I would say that.
Okay, fair enough. So, and you believe that? See, your assumption there is Are you assuming the Christian God, or are you saying that for the universe to begin, it needed a God?
I'm saying for a universe to begin, it must have needed some sort of intelligent life.
Okay, fair enough. So it's not the Christian God. That's a later discussion. So it is an intelligent life. So it is a sentient, meaning a thinking, self-aware being.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? And then it
Yep.
did this thing intentionally. Okay, fair enough. So now I know where your stand is. And like I said, I as far as I can see logically, I don't see any problem with that as a hypothesis. It's on the table. I don't. Another hypothesis is that it doesn't have to be sentient. Certainly, if there's going to be intention, there has to be a sentience.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know that. Well, we don't know all the way back. We don't know if there was intention. First off, we don't know any of that. Every bit of that is an assumption. It could have been
let's go off the assumption that there was intention. Because
no. Let's be aware of our assumptions. Because this is a real important thing. You want to be aware of your assumptions, because if you carry too many foundational facts, ideas forward, you could build on essentially a house of cards. So as we go back, you got to look at each of your steps and justify each of your steps.
Okay.
So we're at the point where you think it's a reasonable idea that a sentient creator created the universe.
Yes.
And I'm saying it's possible, just as a hypothesis, it's just as feasible to say that it was a non-sentient, that it could have been, and these are like three different versions here, or three. It could have been a sentient creator that did not know about humans or wasn't intending to create humans, that maybe just created the universe as it was, possibly to create life, and it just put forth the laws of physics such that life would eventually come to be.
Okay.
Right? So it could be that version doesn't know about us, doesn't care about us. So we can go back here a step at a time.
Okay. Second one.
Each of those steps. I'm not erasing the higher versions here. You understand?
Yeah. I know you're listing out each individual.
Each of these individual ones are reasonable ideas. We can go back to take away sentience. Could it still happen? Yeah, it could. We don't understand the physics and the nature of outside our universe. Outside, we don't know what that means even, but conceptually, I guess I can use that word, because we don't know how universes were created. It could be popped off as multiverses from other black holes and other places, or whatever force thing that creates.
Yeah, and different dimensions or something like that. Yeah, I get that.
For lack of a better word, we'll call it that.
Yeah, okay.
So that's also on the table. It could also be the case that all of what we know, multiverse or not, has always existed. That's a possibility.
But how is the question?
Well, we don't know how. But just because we don't know how does not mean that you can take one of those hypotheses and say, yeah, that's the most likely one. I can't take one of those that I gave you that says, it was a sentient creator who just created the universe and just let it roll. I don't have a reason to say that particular one is more likely than that particular one. And that's the difference I'm trying to get across to people, that because of their cultural exposure and teachings, they're so focused on the God one that they don't even, most of the time, they haven't even heard of these other concepts. So they're running on a hypothesis they don't have a reason to run on.
Yeah, but my reason to go against which of more the likely of those would be the intelligent mind one. But that is for the reason that how would Earth be formed?
Well, we know that.
How would Earth be formed?
How Earth be formed? Did you hear my? I'll just say it again.
No, sir.
as the universe went through the original expansion, it got to about 300,000 years old when photons were first released. Before that, it was just concentrated plasma. Okay, and we didn't even have protons, neutrons, elementary particles. As it expanded, it cooled, and initially quarks formed from that. It was a phase change, like water and ice kind of a thing. And then after quarks could hold together and become particles, neutrons, protons, electrons, and then, well, photons are a different thing. But somewhere in that zone they came out. And then when it cools, gets bigger again and cools a little bit more, now protons and electrons can hold together. One proton, one electron, that's a hydrogen atom.
Okay.
And then a couple of hydrogen atoms flying around, if they hit just right, they become a helium atom. And that's as far as the early universe goes. Maybe to lithium, but tiny amounts from what they had calculated. So that's basically as far as the original universe goes. It goes to hydrogen, helium, and let's just call it that. Okay. Eventually, enough of those can come together where they start to cluster, and then everything that's got mass has gravity. So the more it clusters, the more it pulls near it, and then you end up with clusters that are big enough to form into suns. Yeah, every cluster we've seen also forms. Every planetary disk also spins, right?
Okay.
And that's because of angular momentum. Well, let's leave that off. That's too much of a side thing. So now we've got planetary disks, which is a bulge at the center, which is going to be the sun, and then mass around it.
Yeah.
When the sun gets to be a certain mass, it collapses on itself. The gravity pulls it in enough, pushes the internal hydrogen together enough that it can actually start to fuse atoms together, and that creates energy, and now you've got a shining sun.
Okay.
Give it a little bit more time. What's essentially a large asteroid. It's not a belt, it's more of an asteroid disk, if you will, at that point. Those pieces start to come together, and then you start to get planets. And as those planets come together, they kind of suck up the asteroids that are in the same orbit. Because the closest ones come together, and the other ones kind of form the next planet over, kind of a thing. So that's how Earth starts.
Okay, I get it. I know everything from there. But my question: where did gravity come from?
Gravity is it's a good question. It's and it's still something we don't fully understand. So that's a very good question. So now the best question to ask is similar to that, or maybe it's the same, is where did the original laws of physics come from, which includes the strength of gravity, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know. We don't know. So that's your strongest argument right there. It's not a strong enough argument to go to a God, because there is something called the anthropomorphic principle, which is true by definition. I mean, in the sense that we are here, so we can only be, well, we don't know what we can only be, but we have to be in a universe that we can exist in, right? That we won't atoms won't fly apart, right? And those types of things, like you had alluded to what you mentioned at the beginning.
Yes.
So we have to exist in a universe that can support us. So for that reason alone, we know that this set of rules is one set that works for us. Okay. We don't know if this is the only set that can exist. It's possible that this is the only set that can exist. We don't know if there are other types of life that can come together in other types of a universe with other rules.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't know.
So can we take a step back to if you were to defend this in some way, or just explain. I'm going off my reason to believe that there is an intelligent life that created the universe. how would you defend the argument that the universe was just created out of nothing? And like you said, you had those other points that it could have just been, but that's not, to me, it's not very logical. Right. Something can't just be.
It's not intuitive. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, and again, I'm not saying that it can't happen, but your particular one, you don't have a reason to go there other than it makes sense to go from A to B to C in the story that you're putting together. So we don't know that something can't come from nothing. We don't know that if that's true or not. It certainly is unintuitive. And there's also, you got to be careful about applying what we know within our universe, which appears to be cause and effect and determinism and things like that. It's logically incorrect to take those concepts and attach them to the before the universe to create the universe. So we don't know if there was a cause even. So when you put those restrictions, those are not justified restrictions to put on. You can't justify them other than to say that yes, that isn't very intuitive to you because that's exactly what you've experienced, right? You've experienced cause and effect. It's just, I see it as analogous to make an example of someone who believes in a flat Earth. You go outside, the horizon looks flat. So, and that's because you live in that scale, typically before airplanes and whatnot, and rocket ships. So it makes sense intuitively, and we evolved in this what they call middle ground between atomic scales and galactic and spatial scales. We evolved in this middle ground that we can see. Our brains evolved in that. We may not be capable of comprehending things like quantum physics and whatever else there might have been before. We're trying as hard as we can. So it's not that there's anything wrong with your intuition. It's that there's something wrong with the justification. You're giving more credit than it is you're justified in giving to jumping to a sentient creator God.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really everything I'm saying. Yeah, exactly what you're saying is based just off experience. Just because this happened, I assume this. I've never seen something come out of nothing. It's been said, energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Well, so we have seen something from nothing, actually.
What was that?
And that is Hawking radiation and virtual particles. And that's been shown to be something now. So when you get into the quantum world, it gets weirder. And I don't know enough to explain this very well, but I can explain Hawking radiation. Do you know what virtual particles are?
No, sir.
Okay. A virtual particle is basically, you start from just, what we used to call nothing, what you and I used to call nothing, and what I was taught conceptually is, we weren't taught, it was just a word. We thought nothing means nothing. And we thought that the empty space is nothing. Turns out there's more than that. There's some sort of potential field, which is like the quantum field. I think it's called the Higgs field now. Anyways, without going against that creation of, you can't create and destroy, you can create a particle and an antiparticle can come into existence spontaneously and then come back together and destroy each other. So you start with zero, you temporarily create something, and then they come back together and destroy each other, so you end with zero. So in that sense, it doesn't ruin the law of thermodynamics. Where they've determined this to be true is Stephen Hawking 40 years ago in Penrose, I think it was, but it's given Hawking's name, so Hawking radiation they call it, is at the limit of a black hole. There's an escape horizon where once light goes past this horizon, even light can't get out. right? So they've seen radiation at the edges of black holes, where essentially virtual particles are created, but they're right at the event horizon. It's called. This one, instead of like just doing this and destroying each other, this one goes into the hole, and this one comes out. And they saw this radiation initially, and they couldn't figure out where the hell it was coming from. And that's what it has turned out to be after 40 years of experimentation. So in that sense, we have seen something from nothing, at least the way we used to define nothing. So what they've done essentially is redefined at least space as space is not nothing. It is a field of potential. I'm sorry, it's a weird concept, and that's as close as I can get, because that's
it's fine. That was a great explanation.
Yeah, as much as I can understand it. So,
okay.
So, I mean, you can read physics books by Sean Carroll, Sean, and I think it's Carroll with 2 R's and 2 L's. I can't remember. Writes great books, but depending on your science background, and I'm a pharmacist, right? Expect a chunk of it to go over your head. So
yeah,
you do the best you can. Look at the PBS Space Time series. There's hundreds of them. Those are wonderful, and they're like little 3-minute things, so you can take it step by step and go as far as you can do. I've gone. I mean, I watched a lot of those that do go over my head too, and still when I do Einstein and relativity,
that's very interesting.
It's like. I still can't quite get past that, but at least you hear the concepts, and you know that you understand that there are concepts beyond our understanding as lay people, and these people know more than we do.
Okay, well, that actually, I will do more research into that. That does sound very interesting. I think this has been a beneficial conversation for me, just for my knowledge and my gain. But as a Christian, I do have to preach the gospel, whether you believe in Jesus or not. It's none of my business. I can't push it onto you. I just have to let you know.
I'm not asking you to change your mind, right? And so stay a Christian until you have a reason not to, right?
As soon as you're saved, you can't really be unsaved. Just if there's ever a time in your life where that does happen,
unless you were never saved at all, and your interpretation of being saved is incorrect.
The interpretation of being saved is just accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. Yeah. That's all it is. But if you don't want to do that, that is within your rights, with your beliefs, and you can go ahead to do that. I can't stop you. I just have to preach it to you because I am Christian.
You have to. Okay, well, I'm generally against people imposing on other people. What I'm trying to talk about with the physics is what reality is. So that's why I don't call that preaching. I call that education to the level of my ability, which is limited. So I don't. I won't say I don't appreciate it, because I know the intention is very good, and I recognize that, and thank you for that intention, good intention. But there are, just like there are other religions that are, at least currently, more aggressive and violent. I mean, Christianity used to be, right? They went through the Crusades, where they're, their version at that point of spreading the word was at the point of a sword. Yeah. And now we have some of that in Islam. Some, just not all, of course.
Well, of course. That. But yeah, I just wanted to, just say that. Have a good night. Thank you for talking with me and explaining things like that. That actually was really helpful. I don't want to take up any more of the time. I'll let some other people talk. But thank you for talking with me. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, I just want to say the subjects of cosmology, how the universe came to be, and origin of life, I find those fascinating. We don't know how yet, but they're both fascinating concepts to read on. And there's good stuff that's available conceptually that at least we can get that far.
Of course, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking with me, sir. I enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thank you. Me too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, sir.
Mateo.
Yo, what's up? How are you doing?
Hey, pretty good.
Yeah, all right. So I just wanted to ask, why is it that you don't believe in God?
Because I don't have sufficient reasons to. I have not been given sufficient reasons to. I've studied apologetics. I've studied 5 different religions. I don't see enough justification to believe any of them, or in fact, anything supernatural.
Think about it. Like, I think that this could be a pretty justifiable reason. Is, let's say you remain an atheist and you die. If you're wrong, then you go to hell. If you're right, then there's nothing. And if you believe in God, if you're right, you go to heaven. And if you're wrong, then there's nothing. So the benefit of being an atheist is like the loss of being a Christian. So when you're
I understand the concept. Can you right now believe you have 6 fingers on each hand?
No, because I can see that I don't have 6 fingers on each hand.
Exactly. So that's a very simplistic version. I can't. So what you're asking me to do is I don't see the reasons and evidence to believe in a God. So the only way for me
just because you don't see things doesn't mean it doesn't happen. If a tree falls in a forest and you don't see it, the tree still fell.
Yes, I agree. So the only thing I can do is pretend to believe, which is different from believing. And I think that's an intellectual cheat. So, and if I pretend to believe and I go up and there is an afterlife, I don't want to face somebody who knows I've been pretending.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'd say pretending is better than objectively denying when you know that the facts and evidence are there, and when there's reasons.
And I think that pretending is not giving justification. No, that's the wrong word. I think pretending is, if a God exists that created you and gave you a brain with limited ability, we all have limits to whatever degree, I think it's an insult to that God to pretend what you don't know. I would much rather go there.
In this case, God is a being that is so far above us that we can't comprehend anything. It's not a he, it's not a him, it's not an it. It's a being that you can't understand his will. So who are you to determine?
You don't know that. You don't know that.
And you do? I'm sorry, because
neither do I. I don't know it either.
Okay, well, that's just a logical fallacy. You're coming from a
logical fallacy.
Saying that it's better to not believe than to pretend to believe when there's no point in doing it.
Hold on. Let's slow down. Let's stop over talking to each other. Okay. Go ahead and make a point, and I will respond.
I said it's a logical fallacy because you're stating that you can't believe when circumstantial evidence states you can. When 1.18 billion other people in the world believe, I think that you're completely capable of doing it as well. There's no point in needing to fake your belief.
Okay. So that's not a fallacy. You're saying that I'm incorrect.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Which
is a fallacy. Which is you denying the fact that it's possible for you to believe what it is.
No, fallacy is a logical inconsistency. All I'm saying, the right word to use is incorrect. I don't use the word wrong because that implies, right, wrong. I don't mean that. I mean correct versus incorrect. So, but you are incorrect in saying that I cannot believe. I cannot believe. Say again?
I'm saying you can believe.
And how do you know what's in my head? Any more than I know what's in your head.
It is a logical fallacy.
Dude, how do you know what's in my head any more than I know what's in your head?
Well, I'm going off the information that you told me, which you've spoken, and that's what I know. I'm not reading your mind.
I told you I can't believe in something. I cannot force myself to believe in something that is not sufficient to believe any more than you can believe in the 6 fingers because you...
Well, I can believe in 6 fingers because there are people with 6 fingers.
That's not the question. I asked you if you had 6 fingers. Slow down, Mateo. Slow down. Okay. Let's stay in sync here. Okay. I did not ask you about people. Do people exist with 6 fingers? I asked you if you could believe you had 6 fingers, and you said no. Same
If
as
you
me.
come with good
Because
enough evidence.
we can look and we see we don't have six, so we have a reason not to believe in that, right? As just a demonstration that you can't pretend to believe something that you have evidence for. That's that piece of it. So now we get to the question of, can you believe something that you don't have evidence for, or that you have insufficient evidence for? And I think what we disagree on is the amount of evidence. Let's just say, is that correct? So you think
Not really,
there is
because
more?
evidence doesn't really tie in with religion. Religion is based off faith. It's based off your ability to believe, and I don't believe that anybody has an inability to not believe. Everyone
You're
has.
wrong. You're wrong there. You're wrong there.
You believe
You're
that
just
there
wrong
is no
there.
God, yet you have no proof for there being no God. Just like I have no proof for there being a God.
Mateo, we're going to do this slow, point by point, or we're not going to do this. Because if you just want to spit out stuff like that, you go talk to someone else who likes to argue. I don't
That's
like
not
to
what I'm
argue.
saying. I'm simply just
It
proving it wrong.
stresses me. Okay. And
All right.
I'm telling you, okay. I stop conversations when we go 3 times around, and we've been 2 times around already.
Well, you talked with that guy for like 20 minutes.
I did, because it was a nice conversation, and we listened to each other. Okay, so keep it slow, topic by topic, or point by point, I mean, and we'll be fine.
Okay, all right. I'll slow down.
So, because I do want to have this conversation. Because the problem is, when you talk so fast like that, first off, you're younger than I am. I can't follow that much that quick. You put like 5 concepts into 2 sentences. I pick one, or I pick one, and I lose track of which one, and then there's no conversation. So let's keep it slow. Okay. So I think you're incorrect in saying that you know that I can believe X. That's for me to determine. My head only. Okay? So let's have a little consideration for another person. I don't have the same brain you have. And I don't have the same life experience you have, okay?
Okay, I understand that, but that's not to be dictated by life experience or your brain. Anyone with a semi-functional brain, which you clearly have, is able to do this. And my point is...
No, you're incorrect. I spent 10 years studying belief. You're incorrect on that.
Okay, my point is that you believe that there is no God, and you have no circumstantial evidence for that, and I believe that there is a God. So if you're doing this, then this is simply an argument about faith, and there's no point in trying to incorporate evidence into something that you can't have any evidence for.
First off, I don't believe there's no God. I don't have evidence to believe that there is a God. You get that distinction?
I understand.
So you're agnostic.
Yes, are you agnostic or what?
I'm saying, officially, I am agnostic atheist. I do use the word atheist because I don't want to imply that I think that both options are equally likely. It exists, it doesn't exist. So I use the phrase agnostic atheist in this type of conversation. When we're getting down to specifics. Well, and atheists, most atheists are this way, where they will say, I don't believe there's a sufficient reason to believe in the supernatural gods and deities, but of course I can't prove it any more than you could prove it, an absolute. So yeah.
Okay, well, there is no silver lining. If there's a creature or being that created the universe, that by definition is God. If there isn't, then there's no God.
No, there's not.
Really can you prove me wrong? Okay. Explain to me why I'm wrong, please.
You went by real quick, so let me see if I can pull you back to it and ask you to rephrase it, or say it again. You said that there can be no universe without a creator or something like that?
I said there's no silver lining because you said that it's not so 50-50, but it is. If there's a being that created the universe, or if there's a something that created the universe, then that's God. If there isn't, then there's no God.
No, we don't know that. If there is something that created the universe, we don't know what it is, other than to say it's a creator.
Which is God. That's the definition for God.
No.
Do you want me to pull it up right now?
It is the definition of a creator of the universe.
Yeah, which is God.
I know what you're saying. But listen to me. The challenge I have is when you use the word God, it implies a whole lot more baggage than first working on the creator concept and only going as far as that justifies. Okay? So that's why I don't like to use the word God if we're just talking about the universe creator. Just like using the word God, you could imply it to some people in a conversation, the Christian God, for example. So I like to be a little clearer on these things. Because when you say God, that implies self-aware, that implies cares about people, lots of different things.
That doesn't have to be a god. Gods have different defining traits. If we look at Norse mythology or Greek mythology, there are gods that hate people. They don't care at all. Just because it's a god doesn't mean you need to be compassionate.
Oh, good. Okay, you're right. Yeah, you're correct. Good. Okay, so you're not making that assumption. So you're saying that you're saying that a universe creator. What else does that imply? If an entity, if a being created the universe, what else does that imply? Anything else to you?
It implies that it has the ability to create the universe. So if it has the ability to create the universe, I guess that would also imply it has the ability to create the things within the universe. Thus, a god.
I would probably agree with you on that one. I wouldn't. Again, I don't go to the thus a god, but what is the word God? Let me ask you. Maybe I'm putting too much into your assumptions. What does the word God mean to you beyond just the creator, just created the universe thing? Is there any baggage there that I shouldn't be putting on you that I seem to be doing?
I mean, that's his role. It's the creator and I guess manager of the universe and life as we have it.
Do you know that this God? Well, first off, don't take this too strongly because small thing. You're using the word he, but that's just casual colloquial stuff. So that's fine. So it doesn't have to be a he. It could be an it or whatever.
Yeah, it's not meant to specify. It's just meant to
small point. Yeah. I lost track now. What I was going to say. Oh, it does it mean it has to know about us?
I mean, I wouldn't assume so, but even if it's the creator of the universe and manager, as I stated, that means it manages things within the universe. So it doesn't need to know about us, but it probably does, seeing as how it was what created us.
Okay. Well, the universe is a big place, and of course, so could a creator. So maybe the scale is not a problem. But yes, it could be that it knows about us. It could be that it doesn't know about us. It could be that it cares about us. It could be that it knows about us but doesn't care about us. It could be that it created the universe and just let it roll.
I'm sorry, so what's the point you're making here?
I'm just saying there are all these options. I'm trying to separate it out so we can see where the assumptions are and then look at those assumptions and see if those jumps are justified to put in. Because at the core of it, I don't see the justification for God, for universe creator equals God, and then you build from there. When we have a foundation,
presenting options for a God you don't believe in.
That I'm just using my logic here.
Yeah, and what logic is that?
I've just been doing it for 20 minutes. The logic is that you can't.
Well, the logic you're using is quite flawed, especially with your photons created 300,000 years after the universe.
It's not flawed. It's just broken down into smaller pieces than you're using, smaller steps. I'm trying to look at the steps. What Descartes did when he developed his skepticism, and he came all the way back down to I think, therefore I am, right?
I'm sorry, what'd you say? I couldn't hear you.
You know about how Descartes, the ancient philosopher, was a skeptic, and he kept going backwards and backwards and looking at stuff, and the earliest foundational piece that he couldn't go before was, I think, therefore I am. So the only thing that he could know for sure was that his mind existed. Right? I think. I can think. I'm aware that I'm thinking, therefore I exist.
You aren't your mind. Actually, you're simply a consciousness experiencing life through a body. So it's really, you just know your consciousness exists, not your mind.
Well, we don't. Okay, terminology. We don't know how consciousness works. It does appear to be, from everything we've been able to study.
Yeah, we do. Consciousness works as a being able to identify itself and that it exists. That's the definition of consciousness. We know how it works. You know how it works because you experience it on the daily life. Every time you walk out and you say, I'm going to grab a coffee or I'm going to go do this, that's your consciousness experiencing your life throughout your body. So yes, we do know, because, and even you know, everyone knows.
I'm trying to, okay, I'm going off topic then. I don't want to get into, I'm trying not to imply dualism, but that's okay. Maybe we don't need to. Yes, we are aware of ourselves. So yeah, we have a mind, and it appears to be generated by our brain. Are we agreed there or disagreed?
Well, I don't understand what you're saying.
You can disagree. It's fine. I'm just trying to be accurate, so I'm not putting words in your mouth.
I didn't say I was disagreeing. I was just simply saying the way that you're saying it, I don't understand what the point you're trying to convey. I said that we're a consciousness that experiences life through a body, and then you confirmed that and agreed with that. So that was to my point against what you were referencing before that. So I'm wondering, do you agree with me? Do you not? Are you making a new point?
I've lost track, to be perfectly honest. So let's go forward from there. Yeah, okay. We're agreed on the mind and the body. So what's the next step?
Well, we came here to discuss the existence of God or not. And I was explaining to you that since that whole religion thing is based off of faith, whether you're atheist or Christian, then there's no point in being atheist when the benefits completely outweigh. No. When the benefits of being Christian completely outweigh that of being
atheist. I'm not using faith. Faith has no justification, so it's not a good tool to use.
What do you mean faith has no justification? In an argument that's completely about faith, that's the only thing that you can use. When you talk about science, you use evidence, you don't use faith. When you talk about religion, you use faith, you don't use evidence.
That's why you don't talk about religion as being true.
Well, that's
because faith is
about religion.
Faith is not exclusive to religion. Okay? You can say, I have faith that there's a tree 3 planets away from me.
Yeah, on the basis. So that's the same as having faith for a religion that you can't see. So if you're justifying the fact that you have faith for a tree that is thousands of miles away, then back to your point that you said earlier, to where you just can't believe in a God, you have that ability. You just proved that you have an innate ability to believe in things in which you can't see. You just proved that you have an innate ability to have faith in things in which aren't currently present to you. Thus, you have the ability to have faith in God. And back to my point, which I was clearly stating.
When I say no, you don't go forward. Okay. We talk about why am I saying no? Okay. Because otherwise you're just putting words in my mouth and then moving forward.
I wasn't putting words in your mouth. I was putting words in my own mouth.
Okay. So faith is unjustified. If I say that there might be a tree 3 planets away, and I have no reason to believe that to be true, and I say the only reason is faith, that's not enough reason. Faith is just a word.
Yeah, but when you're talking about an argument that completely is needed to justify, and as I said earlier, when you talk about science, you use evidence. When you talk about religion, you use faith. That's melting pot. And additionally,
that's incorrect. That's incorrect.
Okay, so
that's the problem. That is the base problem of religion, is that it uses, to some degree, in some people, that it tries to use faith as a justifiable reason to jump to a conclusion.
It's not a justifiable reason. It's the purpose of the religion. There is evidence for it. That's why we have the Bible.
You are defining a conclusion that has no reason to be defined. I'm sorry, not no reason, because you're right. There is some evidence. There's just not enough, and you're filling that gap with by saying faith is a reason to make that leap of faith. That leap.
Well, I'm not filling that gap by saying faith. I'm filling that gap by giving circumstantial evidence and a reason as to belief. There's no
if you have sufficient circumstantial evidence, you don't need faith.
Yeah, that's not okay. Oh my gosh. How is the Bible not sufficient? And I'm not saying we don't need faith. I'm saying that there's circumstantial evidence, and the point of a religion is faith.
Okay.
But I think we're arguing two different things here.
No, but I think we're done with the faith thing. I haven't convinced you, but I think I've made my points. So maybe we go on, is the Bible sufficient reason to, well, maybe we're not done with faith. I don't know. Because honestly, I don't see any value in faith. I see zero value in faith.
Well, I mean, okay, then again, that's also with your beliefs. Beliefs are different for each person, so I can't, there's nothing I can do to change your subconscious. But
then we're done. Then we will agree to disagree, and we're done.
Well, I'm not finished. I was saying, if you would like to go on to the semantics of, God and the whole universe, then we could go on to the creation of the universe, if that's something you'd like to discuss.
Okay. Going kind of back, but that's fine. Okay, go ahead to the creation of the universe. We'll go back there for a bit, because there's other people here, and we've already covered this once. But let's see where you want to go with this, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, simply my point is that there is no way for the universe to have been created, and all of the universe's creation within itself proves the existence of a God.
Okay. And I think we're done, because that's redundant. We've already covered this. You're not justified in saying that. It is a valid hypothesis, but
and
you
how
can't
are you
take it past hypothesis. Because I gave you a list of other options. You can't take that hypothesis and then move it forward, because you have nothing to move it forward with except for faith.
You didn't listen to my points to move it forward. You're simply saying, this is an issue. You're saying that I don't have any valid reasons here. You're not getting.
No, I said not enough.
A chance to speak about my reasons.
Not enough.
Yeah, and anything can be not enough. If it's like there is enough circumstantial evidence to prove I'm right, and there's also enough circumstantial evidence to prove I'm wrong. But if you constantly say it's not enough, then that's just a way to loop back the argument. I think it's just because you don't have a point proving me wrong is the reason why you're saying it's not enough. Sorry, we're going to disagree. Yeah,
and then
I think you're just mad because I'm right. And I'm right.
No. Okay, don't put stuff in my head. Let's get back to that. That's another reason I'm not going to continue talking to people.
God is real. God is real. Atheism is stupid. God is real. You're dumb. You don't know how to argue. God is real. Praise the Lord. I'll be praying for you. Bless the Lord. Bless Jesus. Bless all of your hearts. Everyone in the audience, I love you. Jesus loves you. Accept Christ in your heart. We all love you. God created the universe. God created all of us. I love all of you. I'm looking out for you. I'm praying for all of you. Have an amazing day, and you need to learn how to debate because you were all over the place. Have a good day.
Bless your heart, Mateo.
Yeah, bless yours as well.
You're living your life. Yeah, I try not to debate. I try to, because debating is a game, and I don't want to play a game. I want to evaluate logic and the evidence, and concepts, abstract concepts. Faith is an abstract concept. Faith is what you use when you're trying to get from A to B. Okay, A is a little bit of evidence, enough to build that hypothesis or whatever you were proposing, and then you add more evidence, circumstantial and otherwise, if you can. And if over here is God exists, and we don't have evidence to bring us to this conclusion, that's when religious people, not everybody does this, but Mateo is doing it, says that faith is an actual thing as valid as evidence. Faith is a word. It is a concept that says you're allowed to jump this gap. he's essentially saying that faith is a type of evidence. And in religion, you can use faith. And in every place else in life, you can't use faith. Like proving there are 6 fingers in front of you. It makes no sense, but it's so ingrained in what they're taught that it's hard to get them to even see that. So that idea, and somebody else about a week ago said something similar. It was like that religion, the good thing about religion is that you can use faith. No, you have no reason to use faith. Faith is a useless thing. We use it no place else. It justifies nothing other than let you rationalize without reason, jumping that gap. We do that in no other place. And it's, someday, I don't know, 1,000 years from now, whenever, cultures will get this point. So it's not bad arguing when he's not understanding that concept, and sometimes we have to disagree, and that's fine, and we'll stop, and we may not have moved off of our original points at all, but it's time to stop when you just keep going around and around, and it's especially time to stop when you start insulting the other guy. Yeah, I'm not the best debater. This is why I don't debate people, because I'm not as my thinking is not as complex as others. I'm not stupid. You can see I'm not stupid, but I'm not going to go up against a logician and a tactical debater, especially somebody who speaks very fast and will throw out 5 concepts in a sentence. Because I'll lose track, and then even if I didn't lose track, which of those 5 concepts should I be talking about? Because you've just built a house of cards. So I try to. The only reason I interrupt is because I try to interrupt them at the point where they're making an error, either assuming that something that is not justified yet, or they've made a factual error, which is usually not the reason, because typically it goes the other way. And I would think that we would want to know what's true and what's actual, and we would want to know if we're wrong. And so we stop making those mistakes and looking rather silly. However, that's not always true. Many people don't want to know. They want to believe in God. It makes sense to them. It's always made sense to them. It's never been questioned. And it hasn't. The presuppositional kind of logic that he's got there, that faith is a valuable thing. He has been taught that conceptually, that faith is tangible tool to use. It is not. Faith can't take you anywhere except for believing something you have no right to believe. Now, whether or not that's good for you or brings you comfort, that's another question. But no, I cannot believe something that you haven't given me reasons to believe. I cannot. And him saying that I can doesn't make it happen. All right. That's probably enough energy expended. And honestly, that whole spew at the end there, it's sad, because I understand he actually said it very kindly, so I appreciate that. But it's rude. I mean, make your points in conversation. If you can't come to agreement, then just move on. And that's another thing I don't understand, how. Maybe I'll get to talk to somebody more about this at some point, when they explain to me how they think that using those types of techniques, which is essentially the indoctrination techniques of having something drilled into your brain so that you believe it, despite any reason to believe it, such as the concept of faith, that then turning that around and putting it into other people, like putting out phrases from the Bible, is going to have an effect on people just because you say it. Not this guy. Anyways, he was very kind to you at the end. He was kind to me at the end. He wishes us all very well. Let's focus on that. So, as usual, be kind to each other in your interactions. And always.